This is Meet Your Rep, a candid conversation with the members of the legislature of the Virgin Islands. Senators are a critical component in every democracy, serving as the voice of the people. Join us for the entire series as we introduce you to all 15 members of the 35th legislature.
I'm Africa Harrigan for Legit TV, and welcome to another episode of Meet Your Rep, a candid one-on-one discussion with the legislature, our lawmakers representing the 35th legislature of the Virgin Islands. Joining me today is Senator Ray Fonseca. How are you?
Hey, great. Blessings. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So let's begin with your childhood. What was your childhood like?
Okay, well, I was born in Savan. I'm a born Savanero, born in Vestigata. I was the last of 7 kids. So all 9 of us, including mom and pop, live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, little wooden house there going up Fireborn Hill. My parents emigrated from the British Virgin Islands in the 1950s. So I went to elementary school here. I went to, in Pearson Gardens, I went to the daycare in Pearson Gardens as a little toddler. I went to Lockard Elementary School from 1st to 3rd grade. And then we had moved out in the country, out Bavoni. So from 4th, 5th, 6th grade, I went to James Madison Elementary.
So let's retract a little bit. In terms of elementary school, during that time, what kind of student were you?
I was always a good student. I never really had any kind of problem, with the law. I was a good student. Yeah.
So would you say that you were more of a bookworm? Were you really active? Were you involved in sports? Did you join organizations in elementary school?
Well, I wanted to play baseball, but I used to get strike out. I couldn't play football. I couldn't run fast enough. And basketball, I just wasn't coordinated with the dribble. So even though I wanted to be a sportsman, I was more like a sports fan. But I knew how to study well. So I was a good studious student. Yes. I studied a lot. I got real good grades. I went to Ivana Eudora Ken High School. As a matter of fact, I went to Wayne Aspinall School in 7th and 8th grade.
Would you say that when you went to Wayne Aspinall School, was that, what were your goals and aspirations at that time? Were you saying that one day I will grow up and become a senator? Did you want to become a doctor? What were your career goals and aspirations in the 7th grade?
I actually wanted to be a nuclear physicist. I used to read all the books on physics, the periodic chart, nuclear fusion, fission. I had actually, when I was in 8th grade, they had a black scientist, astronaut had came down here at high school, and I had got to meet them. I used to read all books in physics. I was, not a nerd, but I just liked physics. So I always thought that I was going to be a nuclear physicist. That's what I wanted to be.
Did you ever think about becoming a scientist?
Yes, definitely. A scientist, yeah. I loved the physics, I was intrigued with, the different way the electrons and the outer shell combine and, make different chemicals and
I
stuff.
can tell that you really studied hard on this.
Yeah, that was my deal, man. I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were in 7th and 8th grade during that time, did you start to become active in clubs and organizations, or were you just deep into your books?
I I wasn't really a guy that went out too much. My brother, the one that's the doctor, he kind of like was out more. Believe it or not, I was the studious one. But I had good friends. I had good, solid friends, and so I went out. But and another thing that I used to do, I used to study a lot of big words. So I knew all those big words. Of course, I learned that that's not appropriate, but I used to study big words and stuff like that. So I was like nerdish kind of dude. Yeah.
In studying big words, as you would say, did you win spelling bees?
No, we didn't have a spelling bee back then, but I would have loved to enter in the spelling bee. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would have loved to enter in the spelling bee. But I was like that. And then of course, I won a full scholarship to go to Florida State University. So all my college and
But
those
let's
expenses.
retract a little bit before
Yeah.
you get to college. What high school did you go to?
I went to Eudora Ken. As a matter of fact, I went to 7th grade in Adalita Concrete, and then Eudora Ken was built. So I went 8th grade at Eudora Ken. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I was in Eudora Ken. But I did go to Wayne Aspinall. It's now called Adalita Concrete, but when I went there, it was Wayne Aspinall. So I went to Wayne Aspinall in 7th grade. Good days, yeah.
While you were attending Ivana Eudora Ken High School, did you start to switch up a little bit, like come out of your shell? Did you start joining activities then? Or were you still pretty much pretty reserved and conservative?
Yes and no. Yeah, you had a girlfriend and stuff, so that changed stuff, My mother had a nice shiny red bug, and, my brother and I, we used to, tell mom and pop we're going to wash our car. Pops had a Volvo. And so then I learned to drive, and things changed, because he used to drive and I used to drive. So, you becoming a man. Yeah, so I went out a little bit more, but not too many. I was always, used to hit the books.
Reserved.
Yeah, yeah.
Conservative.
Yeah, I love math also. I love math. In addition to the science, I love math. Yes.
That's excellent. What message would you give to your high school self, looking back? If you can speak to your high school self right now, what message would you give to your high school self?
I used to hang around with a good crowd. The college prep crowd. So most of the folks that I used to hang around, they went to college. Ain't nothing wrong if you went to a trade school, but most of my friends, them, now are real successful in life. Judges have their own corporations. Doctors. I kind of hang around a good crowd. I went to public school. I never went to private school. But I had good friends. And still, they're close with me today. Yeah.
So you graduated from high school.
Yeah.
And
Eudora
then you
Ken.
said
Yes,
Eudora
high school.
Ken
Yes.
High School.
Yes.
And then you went on and you said you obtained a scholarship to attend college?
Yes.
What
yes.
college did you go to?
I went to Florida State University. And part of the scholarship was, that you would major in business management and hotel administration. So I majored in hotel business and accounting. And so I had dual majors, and so I was pretty big on that. Of course, Florida State was a big football school, and so it was, Bobby Bowden, who is one of the all-time winningest coach. All them guys, Deion Sanders, all them guys went to Florida State. So it was a real nice atmosphere. And of course, FAMU was also in Tallahassee. So I had a lot of local friends that went to Tallahassee. So we had Florida State, Tallahassee. As a matter of fact, Senator Potter was up there in Tallahassee. He went to Florida A&M. Another good friend of mine went to Florida A&M. So, I'm a good local boy. But that's the only time I ever left the Virgin Islands was to study. I born, raised here, never left here other than to go to college. My whole career is in the Virgin Islands.
That is pretty interesting. Now, you said that you had taken up accountant as a major. Did you follow it through, or did you switch majors eventually?
Yes, my my first job was in hotel. I served my first job, as a matter of fact, I was a bus boy in the Honorable Chef Wendell Walker's kitchen. The tips were great, my son. Listen, I was in ninth grade in high school, right? And I used to, I used to sell newspapers too. As a young boy, we used to sell newspapers. One time I had even won a bicycle, my brother and I. Of course, my father and my brothers, them helped me sell, but we used to sell the Daily News and the Home Journal. So right in back street there is where the Daily News, Home Journal. So we used to be up all in the morning. But getting back to the bus boy, I used to serve as a bus boy. Bus boy is the lowest on the totem pole. You got the waiters, the maitre d', and the head cook. But Chef Wendell Walker used to look out for me, and I used to get some of the tips. So I was able to save up some money, from young. So I loved being a service provider. I love waitering on tables. The tips were great, my son, Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And that's a pretty good first job because it teaches you and it kind of grounds you as well to be able to have that type of job as a first job. It's very humbling.
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely.
So you had moved on and you graduated from college. At what point did you say, I want to become a senator?
Ooh, boy, Africa, I going to tell you the honest to goodness truth, right? I don't even know if I used to say it, but I never ever dreamed that I would be a politician. I was a career professional, and I never ever considered being a politician. But now, of course, that I am a senator, it's the best job that I ever have because the people have elected you. You get to serve the people. But I was always a career professional, never into politics. I was a member of the Young Democrats, but I never used to get involved with, elections and all of that until actually when I had retired from the government. In my later years. But I stayed clear of politics. Of course, most of my career was in the federal government at the Housing Authority, and with the Hatch Act, with the federal laws, it's very strict and clear. You could not be involved with politics and be a federal employee. So I stayed clear of politics, but I always respected the politicians. Like Governor Snyder and Governor Farrelly, Governor Turnbull, in the space of my career, I had to do it. Of course, I had to come here in the legislature many times to testify, because, I served as the chief executive officer of the Housing Authority. I had a long career in government, the chief of staff in the health department to the commissioner. So I came before the legislature all the time, but never considered a career as a politician.
What made you switch from wanting to become a scientist to majoring in accounting to working as the chief? What did you say? The chief what?
The chief of staff for the Commissioner of Health. Okay.
Yes.
Well, what happened with the scientists is that I got a full scholarship to go and study business, hotel, and accounting. So that means I had to major in that. So that kind of like killed the physics and so, I got into the business and accounting. Still, a numbers game, so that actually switched. But, I'm still interested in the physics. I still, the James Webb satellite that, is now about 1 million miles away orbiting. I'm still fascinated with those things. That stuff never left my heart.
Would you say working in that capacity, was it fulfilling for you?
Oh yeah, that was my hobby. It's very time consuming, very demanding. The Einstein theory of relativity. E equal mc squared. Which is energy equal mass times the speed of light squared. that tells you, a lot of, that whole equation tells you a lot. So, I ain't gonna go into E equal MC squared, but, I was into those kinds of stuff. Still am today, Yes.
That's pretty interesting because I did not like physics or chemistry.
Yeah,
But it's nice
yeah.
to meet someone who
Yeah.
thinks it's amazing.
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, after you resigned from your job, what did you do next? What was your next career move?
Okay, well, I served as in my career in housing, of course, I also had a second career where I was always in the construction field. My father was a carpenter, and so from a young boy, I used to be up on roof with my father. Was his name Kenrick Thomas Construction, one of the biggest contractors. He taught me how to cut the wood and run the hip roof. And, of course, I served many years as the director of modernization. So I always had a second skill, which is construction administration. I can lay blocks, I can mix cement, I can cut wood, I can pong a hammer, I can level. All of it is numbers, level and measurement. So it's still a mathematical thing. So construction is something that I do on the side. I've built many, many developments, etc., here in the Virgin Islands. Construction is another thing that I fall back. But it's a numbers game, still numbers, yes.
Very much so. Have you ever thought about opening up your own construction company?
Yes, a partner and mine, we did some construction. We did a lot of jobs. I served as a project manager for North Star after the Hurricane Irma and Maria. I'm the one that was the project manager. As a matter of fact, I'm still technically the project manager, so they have the Kmart, the Sears contract. So I've, done the Kmart, St. Thomas, we've done St. Croix, we've done Puerto Rico, all over the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, we've done major, major construction projects. Yeah.
What was it like doing construction projects during or shortly after the hurricane passed? 2 hurricanes passed, Irma, Maria.
It was good. You were able to build back, the communities. The Moravian Church right here, we also was up in that roof, taking off that roof, doing some repairs. One thing you got to see is that, the slave them works hard. Listen, some of those rafters in that roof, right? First of all, the wood in that time was, thick lumbers that you don't even see those kind of lumbers today. So it shows you that the trees of, 2 years ago was bigger than what they are now, But of course, they're heavy. We use a crane now. But back in them days, the slaves was putting them up. And of course, they didn't have nails. They used to do wooden pegs. So you have a wood timber with a peg that's drilled through it. So, you get to appreciate how hard the slaves worked. The slaves, of course, they was getting the Christianity, but of course, they were donating some valuable time to the churches, specifically the Moravian Church, I guess on the spare time. So you get to appreciate the construction, in past, they have the arch design, which they didn't have no steel and concrete, but they had that arch and, of course, thick walls, and, some of them stand up today. You look at the construction code that we have now, the new building code, being on some of the roofs in Savannah area, you realize that in the roofs, they had a little pressure release hatch that when the wind blew up under the roof, a hatch would release the pressure. It's like a pressure release valve in a roof. Brilliant idea. And they weren't engineers and stuff. So it shows you that we basically think we know a lot more than the people of yesteryear, but not really. We just have better tools, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my second hobby, construction.
Oftentimes when I do interviews with contractors, one of the things that they always say is that back in those days, the buildings were built a lot stronger.
Yes.
Do you find that the same type of materials, or at least strong materials, are still being used today?
Well, yeah, they were built stronger in that they were able to withstand the hurricanes because they had the real arch roofs, like a 30-degree pitch on the roof. Of course, they had no overhang on the exterior. In addition to that, they had the shutters on the windows, and of course, the walls were very, very thick, very, very thick walls. So those three factors alone makes the buildings able to withstand. And of course, the lumber that they use was real strong lumber. We had gotten to a point here, we was using 2x4, timbers in the roof, 40 foot, 4 foot on center, which is ridiculous. That's, with a big overhang porch and stuff. Oh, hurricane would love that stuff. So in the older days, they built stronger to withstand the hurricane. Of course, now we use steel and reinforced concrete. So, of course, now the structures are stronger, but they were strong enough.
Right.
Yes, yes.
And compared to the mainland, how houses are built on the mainland, they use a lot of sheetrock. So oftentimes when they have a natural disaster, their homes are destroyed, completely destroyed.
Yeah, that's right. Sheetrock and 2x4 lumber studs. So the whole inside is nothing but, what we'll call paper. We don't use that, those 2x4 studs. It's very, very rare, and definitely not in a home here, Well, very rarely in a home, but if it's done, it's like 16 inches on center. It's built much stronger than it is in the States. So, of course, we have Zone 4, which we also a hurricane and an earthquake zone. So we build very strong here in the Virgin Islands.
Just like our people. What are some of the things that you like to do in your spare time?
I kind of like to listen to music. I love YouTube. There's always on YouTube you can learn to fix anything. So I'm always on YouTube. Of course I like football. Football is my main sport. So you get to follow up on all the games because sometimes, especially now as a senator, you don't get to watch some of the games. So with YouTube you can see it play back. I love boxing. I like the horse racing too. A lot of the guys that are big horse racing, professionals, fanatics, are folks that I grew up with, as a young boy, so.
So it sounds to me that you grew into the love of sports.
Oh, yeah.
Because at first you were into the sciences and the math, and now you love sports.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever...
my first love was to be a sport, but I couldn't, like I said, I had 2 left foot. I couldn't jump, dribble. I couldn't hit that baseball no matter what. And of course, football, I wasn't fast enough. So, I like sports, but I know that wasn't my calling,
I understand. Have you ever been to any professional games?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which ones?
In the States, I've been to Yankees game. Out in California, we've been to Rams game. Been to Miami Dolphins game. I've been to a lot of professional sports. Baltimore, also. I've been to the Ravens game. Been to a few sports games. Been to a Yankees. I also been to the Baltimore Orioles game. Few sports game. And of course, I watch them on TV. So, yeah, I'm a sports fan, boxing fan. Yeah.
What motto do you live by?
I think I like the motto where they say, you fall down 7 times, you get up 8. Because, after I did decide to become, to get into politics, my first few years, I wasn't really a good politician, because I didn't have like the most extroverted type of personality. So, you learn real quickly in politics. Well, if you look at the requirements to be a politician, it doesn't say anything about experience, education, qualifications. You have to be able to convince the voters to like your platform and to like you as a person to be able to support you. So to do that, you have to become, I wouldn't say extroverted, but you have to become a popular person. I wasn't like very popular. I was a less popular guy. So now you have to be, politics has a lot to do with popularity. Some people vote. And of course, the other things is I do have a big family. Like I said, my mother and father was from Tortola. My family go back in Tortola to the 1800s. I can trace my lineage. As a matter of fact, my uncle, Glanny Fonseca, was one of the most popular politicians in the British Virgin Islands. As a matter of fact, they have a bus, a statue of him, and they have a Founders Day that is him and De Castro. There's a holiday for my ancestors in the BVI. So, I got the politics in the blood. It finally came out.
Yes, it did. As a politician, what would you like to achieve? Like, what are some of the things that you would like to accomplish during your time as working as a politician?
Okay, some of the things are some major, major milestones. I want to discuss two things. How much time do we have? Because these are kind of technical and in-depth. The first thing I want to do is the legislature building, right? I want us to just imagine, right? You coming into to St. Thomas Harbor and you get to see a real Capitol building with the lights shining in the night, and that's a Capitol building that's built by Virgin Islanders as a Capitol. Of course, we'll keep this legislature building, but this legislature building, it served as an army barracks, a prison,
A school.
Also social services department was here. It wasn't built to comply with the American Disability Act, the Section 504 Handicap Code, and also, right now, the offices are kind of cramped. We have 15 senators. It used to be where this building was not built to be a Capitol building that serves where us Virgin Islands to make. So I want to establish a new legislature building where the Coast Guard building is. The new highway is coming around now. I understand the Coast Guard is going to have to cross a street to get to the boat. And, so that's one of the priorities. It has a lot to involve with it. And then also, the other thing that I want to discuss is I want to establish where the VI establishes a sovereign wealth fund. Basically, using the rum cover over bonds. And, I like to tell folks that refinancing of the bonds, utilizing the rum cover over bonds, was my idea. I'm the first one has been on the radio with it in my campaign, because here's the deal, right? Our bonds was rated as junk status. And we in the Virgin Islands, we have the best money in the world. And the best money in the world is when you get a check from the federal government. So all the Virgin Islands were established where the rum and the oil, we call it the cover over money. When they're taxed, that money is covered over. It's given back to the Virgin Islands. It's like our tax code. We don't pay federal taxes. It all comes back to here. So once you get a check from the federal government, you should always be able to have good bonds as long as you have your finances and your audits and your transparency and your accountability. So I want us to establish a sovereign wealth fund where we, within the next 10 years, will have $1 billion in reserves. We need that because when a hurricane comes, we need to have a fund to dip into. If a pandemic comes, we need to have a fund to dip into. After the hurricane comes and we get the $7 billion from FEMA, well, with the 10% matching, we need to have that 700 billion, that's $70 million to be able to get our projects going. So we need to have a reserve fund. The GRS was another situation where all of that needs to be under this sovereign wealth fund, where the Virgin Islands will have our own fund. So there's some ideas that I have to create that. Of course, we want to grow our rum revenues, and we also have to increase our oil refinery. We have to get the oil refinery back up that is in full compliance with the Environmental Protection Agency. We need to get back to manufacturing. When I was a young boy growing up here in the VI, we had manufacturing. We had Martin Marietta was refining the bauxite, making the aluminum. We had Hess. We had watches. We had Crucian rum. Those are the things that makes the VI profitable. Also, in addition to that, the tourism. The hotel room tax, we need to look at that closely because I don't think the hotel room tax, we need to look into the hotel room tax, make sure we're getting the right revenue. So those are some of the things that I have.
That's very passionate. Thank you for sharing. So let's go back to the night that you found out that you would become a senator. Tell us about that experience.
Oh, brother, my son, listen, that was the best night ever of my career because, the people of the Virgin Islands had elected me. Africa, a lot of people was telling me I'm not electable. The businesses, they weren't donating, they weren't helping my campaign. Everybody was telling me I was unelectable. I would pray to the Lord. I ran several times, and I would have the conversation. I said, well, why I'm winning these elections? I'm doing everything. He said, listen, it's not your time. Just continue to get better, spread the message. So, that night was so good. I have a good campaign team, right? Ariel and Eric and Arta and Janet and a whole line of posse, Miss Wade. I don't want to miss any names, but it's a lot of folks that, helped me. So it was, it was a joyous time. We had a little celebration. I didn't get drunk, but we celebrated. The people elected me to do a job, so I'm here to do the people job, to help the poor, the underprivileged, the elderly, the blind, the disabled, those in chronic pain, the homeless. So I'm here to do the people's job. And, this has been the greatest privilege of my entire life.
What legacy do you want to leave behind?
Well, I want the Virgin Islanders to continue to support their own. I would like for the Virgin Islanders to improve in their financial literacy. I want the Virgin Islanders to be able to own more of their homes. Home ownership and owning homes is a big part of my platform. I know I don't have enough time to go into that, but owning a piece of the rock is important. I'm a poor guy. We live 9 of us in a little 2-bedroom home, 1 bath. So you gotta come from humble beginnings. You gotta work hard. You gotta be honest and always try to do your best. But these are our Virgin Islanders. I want us to continue to, and even to grow, to own more and more of the Virgin Islands. But the first thing, we got to support your own. You got to support your own.
Thank you, Senator, for this interview with Meet Your Rep. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Meet Your Rep. I'm Africa Harrigan. Until next time.